Okay. Okay. Oh my god, I can't use that. No. Man, the one day I was really prepared. Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. I think we're finally set up. The dude in front of me does not give me enough time to get on air. So, right, we're gonna start. I'm gonna cut this song off. Normally I'd wait, but we're late. And we are live, we're live. You're listening to Save the Vibes, live on KRUI 89.7 FM. I am your host, Sweet Jorna, and today is about to be a journey if I've ever seen one. We've got possibly the meatiest show that has ever been done on air, for this show at least. What other topic than Israel and Gaza? Everyone alive on Earth with eyes and ears in the past week has seen and heard something about the events currently unraveling in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, with the whole region caught in the crossfire, literally and figuratively. I want to preface this like I always do, but with extra emphasis today, given the nature of today's topic. No opinions or slants or biases, framings are reflective of KRUI. If you have anything to express following the show, please direct all comments to me. I also like to provide a personal trigger warning. There will be talk of violence. That's the nature of this conflict. So if you have any sensitivities to that sort of things, I'd just tune in next week. And before we start, I want to get ahead of any ways my words could be misconstrued. I will attempt to distinguish as much as possible between the people of Israel and the Jewish population, because although there is a massive overlap of the two, I do not intend on implying that any of the condemnable actions by the state of Israel are in any way related to the religious beliefs of the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is a very real issue, as are the actions committed by the Israeli government. So what's led to today? On the morning of Saturday, October 7th, Hamas, which is classified as a terrorist organization in pursuit of the liberation of Palestine, began firing thousands of missiles into Israeli airspace before foot soldiers of the movement took to dozens of Israeli towns in a brutal campaign against the violent occupation of Palestinian territory. This campaign included raids on the homes of Israeli civilians, military bases, and the taking of roughly 150 hostages by the group. Men, women, children were all included in the hundreds that were killed on this siege. Israel has responded with a highly sophisticated bombing campaign on Gaza, which is located in southern Israel, bordering Egypt, and the geographic origin of the siege and the primary operating location of Hamas, and by cutting off all supply chains and electricity to the area until the hostages are released. Israel has also issued an order to evacuate Gaza while positioning its troops near the border, implying that there's a coming ground siege on the area. And actually, updates from this very morning that I didn't even get to include in the script for today is that Israel has been bombing the entry and exit points of Gaza, which it told civilians to evacuate from, virtually trapping them inside. The United Nations has condemned the evacuation order, and Hamas and has urged Palestinians to not comply. We'll get into why for that in a minute. Deaths so far have included over 1,300 Israelis and 1,800 Palestinians. Dozens of foreign citizens have been killed as well. Online, vast amounts of first-hand footage of this violence has been circulating in abundance. And there's an abundance of online heated commentary on the issue. Some of the videos drawing the most attention feature members of Hamas actively raiding households, killing victims, parading dead bodies through the streets. It's really brutal. And online commentary has resulted in mass discourse from both sides and about both sides of the issue, with levels of polarization that are rare even for the internet. On Israel, the origin of Israelite and Palestinian claim to the land of modern-day Israel goes back to biblical times and beyond. I would love to go through that history, but it's mostly irrelevant to the root of the issue happening today. I'll recap, starting with modern history and the formation of the Israeli state. Following World War I, the League of Nations placed Palestinian territory, that is now the State of Israel, under British control. This land was formerly controlled by the Ottoman Empire, but was allotted to the British after its absolution. In 1917, the British expressed support for the establishment of a Jewish state within Palestinian territories. From 1922 on, mass Jewish immigration to the area took place, especially from Eastern Europe, in which Jews were facing serious persecution during and after the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany in the 1930s and their spread across Europe. Jewish immigration to the area increased exponentially. This means that the mass influx of people were coming to a region in which a population already resided. This is where things get incredibly messy when it comes to the public temptation, and I guess personal temptation as well, for a lot of people to pick sides on what is really an incredibly complex issue. Jewish people were validly fleeing persecution. Their lives and livelihoods were at stake. They were being forced out of their home countries, if not killed. A massive religious/ethnic population was relegated to refugee status, and what seemed to be the only secure place for Jewish immigrants to turn was simultaneously the homeland of Palestinians. The influx of people naturally was met with resistance and rebellion from the native Palestinians, who were being crammed into and eventually shoved from their own land. Since then, there has been no peace between Israel and Palestine. I literally could not cover every instance of offenses and counteroffenses and civilian clashes and named massacres between these groups if I had a full 24 hours of broadcast time. It should be known that Palestinians have initiated their own offenses against Israel many times before. The most widely known ones probably being the first and second intifadas in 1987 and 2000, which were uprisings that took place in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, two extremely densely populated areas where Palestinians have been virtually corralled into. Gaza, which is less than 150 square miles, has a population of 2 million, and the West Bank, which is slightly less than 2,300 square miles, about the size of Delaware, has a population of 3.3 million. Also, the territories that were supposed to be Palestine, according to the UN's two-state solution. In 1947, the British turned controller of this territory over to the United Nations, and the United Nations introduced the two-state solutions. That's where Gaza and the West Bank came from. Israel for the Jewish population, and Palestine for Palestinians. This was not popular with Arab Palestinians, and those from the surrounding states. But in 1948, Israel declared itself a state, and peace has not returned. In the same year, as its declaration of statehood, Nakba began. Nakba, which literally means catastrophe, was an extremely violent campaign by Zionist militias to drive out Palestinians. Thousands of Palestinians were killed, tens of thousands more were forced to flee, entire villages were destroyed, and shortly after, whatever was left came to be occupied by droves of Israeli settlers. This is still happening today to Palestinians. Israelis are overtaking what few Palestinians' homes still exist, and it's pretty common occurrence that on any given day, Palestinian family leaves their house to do something very normal like buying groceries, and they come back to a bulldozed pile of rubble. Their house no longer exists. This is one of the reasons in the current conflict that Hamas has been warning residents of Gaza not to leave. If droves of the population leave, even for as little as a week, to seek refuge in another country, it's speculated that they won't have any home to come back to. This being a real concern for people trying to secure their own safety shows that Israeli terrorism has been working. The reality for those in Gaza is either let yourself die in what's likely become even more active of a war zone than it already was, or flee, find safety, and lose what little claim to your own land you have left. From the very founding and establishment of Israel, the state has actively expressed and acted on its desire to rid Palestine of Palestinians. And it's sickening to know that it's not even beneath Israel to use a wartime evacuation declaration as a means to expand its settler agenda. Since being a state, Israel has also found itself in various wars every couple of years. It just happens. Of course, with Palestinians, but also with Egypt, with Syria, with Jordan, Lebanon, for one reason or another. One of the most insane aspects that has come of Israeli statehood is its military capacity. Just about every time it's in one of these periodic wars, it wins, even capturing territory that the various conflicts weren't even about. How has a country established only 75 years ago managed to build up such a powerful military? Money, support from the West. Israel is one of the biggest recipients of aid from the United States. According to the Congressional Research Service, in this year's national budget alone, Congress has appropriated $3.8 billion to Israel. Israel to date has received a total of $158 billion from the U.S. All of those are with a B, yes, of course, making it the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. aid since World War II. The same report states that almost all U.S. bilateral aid to Israel is in the form of military assistance. Israel is also a leader in the worldwide network of advancements in military technology. And who else do they test this technology on other than Palestinians that have little to no means to defend themselves? The technological advancement of Palestine virtually froze in time at the establishment of the Israeli state. Palestine has been deprived of the freedom to advance due to mass displacement and the deprivation of the formation of a central government. Even if other countries wanted to send Palestine as much money as Israel gets, it doesn't have a central power to receive that money, not to mention the packing of Palestinians into these dense pockets that they currently live in. It has caused an ongoing humanitarian crisis in which people are focused on trying to stay alive and obtaining the resources to do so rather than advancing their weaponry. Within specifically Gaza, Palestinians have little to no freedom of movement. They're very strictly confined to this area, and Israel is in full control of what supplies are allowed in and out of the borders of Gaza. This leaves the area, I'll remind you, 2.3 million people permanently deprived of resources, and Israel is about to get Israel's not about to let giant shipments of weapons enter the borders of Gaza, so any weapons Palestinians have to defend themselves from Israel were likely obtained through various underground networks or other terrorist organizations. And this is second, third, fourth-hand weaponry, while Israel makes sophisticated technology for fun. This is obviously a massively skewed power dynamic. Every day since the founding of the Israeli state, Every day since the founding of the Israeli state, mass violence and military technology has been used to terrorize Palestinians into death, submission, or exile. This generally brings us up to modern times. Israel's military is caked up to the gods, and the nation is wholeheartedly backed by the U.S. and other Western superpowers because of their interest in Israel's advanced weaponry and its position in the Middle East. Now, on Hamas, also known as the Islamic Resistance Movement, was founded in 1987 as the political wing of the Muslim Brotherhood to organize resistance against Israel and Palestine. They gained popularity amongst the Palestinians due to their strong stance against the concessions expected of Palestinians in previous rounds of negotiations led by other liberation groups for peace and statehood of Palestine. The charter of Hamas states on the matter of the concessions, quote, "There is no solution to the Palestinian problem except by jihad. The initiatives, proposals, international conferences are but a waste of time, an exercise in futility. The Palestinian people are too noble to have their future, their rights, and their destiny submitted to a vain game." They've also been active in displaying their resistance to Israeli occupation by consistently campaigning and organizing things like street protests and actual confrontations with the Israeli Defense Force, tangibly demonstrating to their constituents that they are serious about their belief in the liberation cause. Hamas has support because they consistently do something to respond to Israel's wrath. The people of Palestine have no voice. They have no say in Israel's government. They have no money for influence. They have little weaponry, and they have no representation. They don't even have their own land. Being relegated to a role that is so passive, Hamas has gained support by organizing reactionary violence, which is the very last line of being heard. Since initiating suicide bombing campaign against Israel in 1994, Hamas has gained the reputation as the most violent of the groups seeking Palestinian liberation, and is often falsely cited by Israel as being representative of the entirety of Palestine, as is happening currently. Although the group democratically won governance of Palestine in 2006, political divisions left it to primarily preside over the Gaza Strip, reaffirming that it is not representative of all of Palestine. The U.S. has classified Hamas as a terrorist organization and interfered with other various factions that the Palestinian Liberation Movement seeking to organize a coup against Hamas. And all of you U.S. foreign policy nerds listening out there might recognize this as being very, very similar to other Middle Eastern conflicts in which the U.S. aids one terrorist faction in attacking another terrorist faction, resulting in the further development of terrorist factions. And this is how we got organizations such as the Taliban. Hamas is only one organization that is formed in response to Israel's actions, despite Israel's current claims and actions in which they are bombing all of Gaza to demolish Hamas. Over in the West Bank, similar conditions exist as in Gaza, but it's not as dense, which provides some relief to the population. There are numerous refugee camps for Palestinians. I won't even start on being classified as a refugee in your own land. But these encampments resemble homeless encampments like ones you might see in a bigger city in the U.S. People living in tents or some other form of low-quality shelter, if even that. The Israeli Defense Force conducts pretty much nightly raids on these encampments, killing 2 to 3 Palestinians each time. The IDF attempts to justify this by claiming that they are seeking to find and eradicate terrorist networks. In a cyclical fashion, there's actually been a rise in liberation organizations forming in these encampments as a response to the raids. Al Jazeera has been doing the Lord's work in providing coverage of these raids daily and keeping track of the formation of these groups if you're interested in learning more on that. But these are the conditions of present-day Palestine. That was a very quick rundown of the basics of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. We will be covering more of the details in coming weeks on the show, but today I'd like to focus on what this has done to people not involved in the conflict whatsoever. In my personal opinions, based on what's been circulating online, the community of active social media users have got priorities all in the wrong place, and it's largely taking away from the greater sentiments of these various causes. If we zoom out from everything happening, if we zoom out of the issue and look at the behavior that's come from it, especially in America, mainstream media, and significantly online, there are a lot of opinions that strictly condemn one another. People not in Palestine or Israel right now condemning each other online because they don't want civilians to die on either side is not freeing anyone. There is an abundance of people condemning those that are condemning the violence, and this discourse is aimed at the wrong people. Midwestern moms posting news articles stating that they're praying for the well-being of all those impacted are not responsible for the oppression or the liberation of anyone across the world. It's great to see so many people paying attention to an issue. It's great to see so many people paying attention to an issue that has gotten so little mainstream attention for the past 75 years. The oppression of Palestinians, that's the issue, but it should not be like this. It should not result in the further polarizing of Americans, of all people from the country that has done nothing but stoke the flames of this conflict the most of all. I'm not saying that Americans should all just shut up. Having been invested in learning more about this issue for several years now, personally, it's good to see so much of the public's eye on a cause that hasn't had this amount of attention. More people now know what a Palestine is. But Americans should not be steering the discourse in the direction that it's going now. Finding a reason to cancel a celebrity because they tweeted about the injustices being committed by either one of the sides is not productive in any way. Blocking a family member because they're Christian and sympathetic to the Israeli side is not freeing anybody. It's causing unnecessary divisions between people and an already polarized social climate, when it would be most helpful to discuss and focus on tangible ways to secure the safety and well-being of all those on the ground actually experiencing the atrocities that we have the audacity to cut your grandparents off about. It's useless. If you can simultaneously support a cause on principle while not condoning objectively atrocious actions. Hamas is literally doing the exact definition of terrorism. Can't argue with that. That's violence for political purposes. There are also some practical purposes, but no sane human being with human emotions is about to explicitly support the mass rape and murder and parading of dead bodies of civilians around a village. Israel is also doing terrorism now and every other day of the year. Every day, few international news sources that are covering those small-scale raids on refugee encampments for Palestinians being killed by the IDF. That's terrorism. We know because the IDF definitely has the capacity to wipe out the entirety of Palestine, but they continue to kill a couple of refugees every day to send a political message against resistance movements. That's terrorism. There's an abundance of pain and suffering on both sides as a result of the violence being inflicted by both sides. People are condemning each other for condemning violence because violence is seen as the only way out. There's truth to that. If Palestinians could non-violently vote the current administration of Israel out of power, they would do that. And I'm sure if Israel could evaporate Palestinians without the use of violence, they would. Violence is apparent in the issue, and peaceful negotiations haven't worked. Third-party mediation hasn't worked. Two-state solution hasn't worked. But explicitly promoting violence, condoning it, is not a requirement. Condemning the usage of violence is not congruent to condemning the cause. Palestine must be freed, but no one should be expected to turn a blind eye to literal war crimes. And Jewish people need a place to seek refuge, but that doesn't have to happen at the expense of Palestinian people. Both sides are doing objectively bad things and should be called out for what they are. One of the worst things we could do as people is desensitize ourselves to the reality of the violent loss of life, and anyone celebrating that on either side is not a part of the solution. As for an actual solution, a way to accomplish what we all seek, which is peace in the Middle East, this is not for anyone in the Western world to decide. We, especially Americans, have contributed to this conflict enough. As mentioned before, Israel is funded by and was founded on Western interest. The British encouraging exiled Jewish populations to take refuge in Palestinian territory was a Western interest. Almost every war in Israel that's been fought with surrounding countries has included Western interest. Who does hold all of the cards and who does have the power to end the violence and the entire conflict tomorrow, if they wanted to, is Israel. There's sympathy that should be had by and for both sides. And people looking in internationally should continue to hold attention and concern on the war and the reasons for it. But Israel, with its immense position of power, will ultimately decide the fate of Palestine. The current conflict was initiated by resistance to occupation. The response to that resistance is in the interest of occupation. The only way to end the current war and any wars that will take place in the future between Israel and Palestine will happen when Israel makes the call to stop expanding its occupation. That's the end of the story. And that's all we have for today, folks. That's our show today. Remember, all things expressed on Save the Vibes are not reflective of KRUI, although I thank KRUI for allowing me the platform. Any questions, comments, concerns, recommendations for future shows can be sent to me via all major social media platforms. My @ is Lenny_the_Fool. That's LENY_the_Fool. On X, Instagram, Twitter. I greatly appreciate outreach. We will not be live on Twitch after this, but we will be live later this week covering all that did not make it into today's show. You're listening to Save the Vibes live on KRUI 89.7 FM, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I will see you next week and back to your regularly scheduled tunes. I don't know why my voice sounds so raspy. I sound like I'm crying. Well, thanks for finding everything informative. Sorry my voice sounds like I have the suds. Biden did lie about the footage that he saw in particular, but I don't think it mattered that much because the footage was still brutal. The footage is still dead bodies in the street. The footage is still, people documenting them committing war crimes. It's still awful. I don't think the details of the fact that Biden lied about seeing a baby beheaded are that important because very adjacent things were happening. The atrocities of war are hard to look at. Yeah. I know I can't I'm not streaming after this, but I have so much to say. Let me turn this down. God, what did I just say? We need to know what's going on. Atrocity of war, hard to look at. Yeah. But the atrocities of war are happening as a result of violence from both sides and by both sides. It's just as sad to see Israeli children dead in the street as it is to see a bunch of Palestinian children under some rubble because their building was bombed. It's really sad, and Israel's the only one that has power to fix it, and that's why there's so much support from Palestine, because they're not in a position to fix anything. It's either die or keep fighting and just prolong the problem. Israel, I don't know, there's just that's why all the attention is on Israel. But I do think it is awful where was my train of thought? Israel is the one that has all the cards and they can end it. Oh, I was saying it's in horrible taste, like awful timing. And I agree with people saying that it is in really, really bad taste right now to be holding like pro-Palestine protest, because the whole thing was initiated by a horrible raid killing hundreds and hundreds of civilians. And then now you're going to start supporting this cause of the terrorists. We can do that next week. We can support Palestine next week. This right here, these war crimes committed against Israeli citizens, that's not a cause for celebration to me. That feels like it's made in really awful taste, and I don't think that's bringing progress to anyone anywhere. God, but we can't do anything. I agree. It's men. If the world were all women, I think we'd be eating grapes like Julius Caesar. But unfortunately, men just keep coming around. Nuh-uh. I think they've got Love and Exile in here. That's who I saw at the Hansher the other day. Aruj Aftab. Oh, on the music cue. My bad. Oh, there's so many things. I had to add an extra page to this script. It actually came out to 9 pages long because I was making a whole bunch of bullet points of things I want to mention in this after show, which is probably going to come in the next couple of days. And I was looking at stuff, I was watching Instagram stories today, and there's just still so many things to commentate on. People using social media to say the posting on social media is useless. Like, we're all posting because we want to be saying something. Social media isn't a total demon. Sometimes it really is just about bringing eyes and care and sentiment to these issues. I honestly thought the whole posting on social media thing, posting an infographic, was useless until like a year and a half ago when I brought those two, someone who had protested and someone who had organized a protest. The person that had organized the protest, her name was Serena, she organized the protest in support of Palestine. There was something else that had happened a couple years ago that warranted, maybe it was the attack on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that warranted, she pulled together protests for Palestine. And I was kind of drilling into her, saying, what does this do? And she, in some beautiful words, I'm so sad I don't have a recording of that interview, but in the most beautiful way, she had stated, just showing that you care means a lot to people on the receiving, who the protest is for. Just seeing someone in a different city, in a different country than you, banding together, taking time out of their day to band together and show that they care about your cause is actually some kind of motivation. It feels good. It feels good to know people are on your side. And so posting on social media feels like that. It's a virtual form of people just saying, hey, I'm on your side. And so I'm not nearly as mad about infographics as I once was, or about people posting the black square. Well, the black square was another issue entirely. Solidarity is not useless. That's what I'm trying to say. Solidarity is not useless. But I should probably get out of here. I started late and I have to rush off. There are people waiting for me in the lobby. All right. They need hope right now. Yeah, they do. I just personally think it was a little bad taste to, right after they launched an offensive against civilians, that people started backing the cause. That was the wrong moment. They're on the right track. Palestinians need hope right now. They do. All right, goodbye. But I will be leaving. All right. See everyone. See you next week.